It's an amazing time to be a customer experience expert and a fascinating time to look back at the immense changes to both the idea and practice of customer experience that the last decade has brought. Personally, as a third-generation entrepreneur, this was the decade where I made my transition to taking the principles I had learned through my years of entrepreneurship and codifying them into ideas and theories to teach others how to improve the customer experience and customer service in their organizations. So as we close out the 2010s, I thought it would be interesting to look back at the top 3 customer experience game changers of this last decade. Now, so much has changed in the past 10 years, and truly, no decade prior to this one has seen the immense changes and has had such importance to the theory and practice of customer experience. So what were the things that were truly transformative, that set the stage for what customer experience is going to be in the next decade? And by the way, make sure to check out our video next week because we're going to look at 3 predictions for what the game changers of that next decade are going to be. Game changer number 1, establishment of customer experience as a profession. In this past decade, customer experience went from something promoted by a handful of early evangelists to a recognized discipline impacting almost every other field of business. In 2011, at the beginning of the decade, we saw the establishment of the first comprehensive professional organization dedicated to the profession, the CXPA, or Customer Experience Professionals Association, and it was created by 2 of the pioneers of customer experience, Gene Bliss and Bruce Temkin. This decade also saw an explosion in the number of C-level executives with experiential titles such as Customer Experience Officer, CXO, Chief Customer Officer, CCO, and similar. And while many of these titles existed in the last decade, they exploded in popularity in this decade. In fact, a 2019 Forrester report reported a 1,000% increase in the number of CX executives over a 5-year period. Perhaps most importantly, this decade saw the deep development and refinement of the tools of the profession, from customer journey mapping to service blueprinting to sophisticated voice of the customer programs. The science and practice of experience is a world away from where it was 10 years ago. And along with the increased presence of the CX profession has come greater understanding throughout most industries about the idea of experience, about the idea of viewing experience as an entire journey from beginning to end, from touch point to touch point. A Gartner survey from 2017 found that 81% thought they would be competing primarily or solely on the basis of customer experience in 2 years. That was 2017. If they were right, then that 81% is now. In the end, the biggest game changer that happened to customer experience in the past decade was the acceptance, development, and rise to prominence of customer experience as a business strategy and as a profession. Well, game changer number 2, the explosion and use of big data. Let's travel back to 2010. MySpace was still big, LinkedIn was 8 years old, Facebook was 6 years old, Twitter was only 4 years old, and Instagram was just being born. More importantly, we were still accessing many of these platforms primarily from our desktop computers. Sure, the first iPhone showed up in 2007, but smartphone sales that year were only about 120 million units. At the beginning of the decade, smartphone sales were up to 300 million. But this year, just to show you the change, they are estimated to be about 1.5 billion. And let's not forget, it's not just about the devices, but the apps on them. How many of us manage a much greater portion of our lives using our mobile devices today? Much of how we do so came in the last decade. Delta Airlines launched its app in 2013. Spotify grew its paid subscriber base from a couple of million at the beginning of the decade to 100 million this year. In fact, even the word app, which has been around forever, was voted the word of the year in 2010 as a reflection of how our relationship with these devices and the programs on them has grown. Finally, one last stat, the Apple App Store, when it launched in 2008, had 500 apps. Last year, during the 10-year anniversary, it had 2 million apps. And of course, one of the biggest changes to the explosion of big data in the past decade is the growth of the Internet of Things and of all the digitally connected everyday devices. We thought we knew what lots of data was in 2010. Wow, did we have no clue what was coming. And with this explosion of data has come the technology to collect, parse, and analyze it. And the sophistication and power of this technology is growing by leaps and bounds every day. As a keynote speaker, I speak at a lot of conferences, and a simple walk around the exhibit hall at any customer experience themed event reveals the amazing technological advancements that are being developed to manage and capitalize on this explosion in big data. This data explosion has also brought with it a whole host of new experiential issues, privacy, security, and consent, that most industries did not have to be concerned with in the past. Now, more and more industries are having to put these issues front and center. Big data has absolutely been a game changer in this past decade for customer experience, and more than that, it's also leading to one of my predictions for customer experience game changers in the next decade. But that is the topic for next week's video. All right, game changer number 3, our understanding of the impact of emotion on experience. The final game changer is almost the opposite of big data. It's based on the human behind the data, and more specifically, our understanding of human emotion and its importance and its impact on experience. Now, this is one of our key focus areas here at CTS Service Solutions, particularly the focus on emotion as it relates to both digitally integrated and human-to-human customer experiences. Now, I often say in my keynote speeches and customer service training that we live in a golden age of psychology because we learned more about the human condition in the past few decades than in all human history before. And while much of that knowledge has been adding scientific confirmation to an understanding of human nature that is as old as the written word itself, some of that knowledge has created new and unique insights, disproving long-held beliefs and theories. This decade was a decade in which behavioral economics in particular, but also evolutionary psychology and neuroscience penetrated mainstream thought and business thinking like never before. From the publication of Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow in 2011, with its very important idea of the peak end rule, to a renewed interest in Robert Cialdini's 1984 classic Influence, to a deeper understanding of cognitive biases and their impact on human decision making, this decade made it cool to talk neuro. Now, research into emotion and customer experience was part of this overall trend, with great work being done by my colleague Colin Shaw and others in advancing our understanding of the impact of emotion on experience and how emotion can be determinative of experience results. The latter half of the decade found the idea of an emotional customer journey gaining traction and beginning to inform mainstream discussions of customer experience, not just human, but digital as well. Emotion became such a centerpiece of customer experience thought that the Temkin Group even labeled 2016 as the year of emotion. And this understanding of emotion, of the idea that the intuitive, instinctive, emotional brain overrides the logical brain, resulting in irrational decision-making, has changed and is changing not only how we approach experience design, but in the case of our company, how we train frontline teams. We use these principles to create customer service training that's unlike anything that was done in the past. Well, 2010s, it's been a wild and crazy ride. Being in customer experience for the past decade, I feel a little bit like I was in California for the gold rush of the mid-1800s. Except this has been an intellectual and technological rush, a moment to be at the forefront of a set of evolving ideas and concepts to help make customer experience better, make businesses more profitable, and quite frankly, and this may be a topic for another video, to help us all live more enjoyable lives. So those are our 3 customer experience game changers of the last decade. Make sure to check out our video next week where we're going to look at my predictions for the 3 biggest game changers of the next decade. Until next time, be your customer's hero.